So when it comes to the run, this is probably the most highly regulated part of the race, in the manual especially. Everything's detailed. So I'm not going to touch too much on the mandatory kit. I'm just going to pick out some real hints and tips that will hopefully help you on the day. The first thing, I guess, is your footwear. The first half of the run is not really too technical, so I've actually normally run it in a pair of road shoes, which is quite nice because there's a bit of climbing, but it keeps the comfort up and you can move quite quickly over the terrain with them. When it comes to the mountain though, that's a whole different ballgame. The terrain here is rough, rugged, rocky, and really slippery, especially when it's wet. The rock, just when it gets a wet surface on it, it becomes really quite slick in places. So when it comes to footwear, for me, the main takeaway is that it's got to be pretty grippy and supportive, because you're going to be really tired at this point. So you want to give your feet a chance. You don't want a super flexible shoe that your feet's going to work really hard in. You want to give them a chance to not be working too hard on that slippy terrain. I normally run in something a bit like this. It's reasonably stiff, got a good bit of support, but a nice soft bit of rubber to grip onto that slippy rock. The second thing is, you're going to be running for probably more than 5 hours, so you're going to want to carry your mandatory kit as comfortably as possible. For that, I wear not a traditional backpack, but a running vest, a bit like this. I guess the key thing here is it's got to fit really well. It's going to be snug, so you don't have that horrible chafing issue, which is just horrendous. The other point with these is that you have loads of accessible pockets, which is great because you're going to need to fuel, carry all your gels or whatever it is you're eating, have access to your water bottles to keep your nutrition up throughout that race segment, and this is probably the best way to do that. I said I wouldn't go too much into the mandatory kit, but I just wanted to emphasise how important some of that kit is. In fact, it's all important, but the weather up in the mountains in Scotland, even in June, can be super changeable and really horrible. You shouldn't think that you're not going to use it. It's just a thing just in case of emergency. I actually had to use most of my kit last year. The weather was absolutely horrendous. The key bit of that kit though, that I think that people underestimate, is the jacket that's required. This is my jacket. It packs up super small. It's kind of designed for this. It's a little Celtman number, but it's properly waterproof, as it has to be. And it has, again, the other thing that's super important that people forget every year is it must have a hood that's part of the jacket. You can't just have a hat, you need to have a hat as well. I ran off the mountain last year with my hood up, trying to keep warm. It was freezing cold rain that was lashing down the mountain, even when I was working hard. I needed this to keep warm. It really is a crucial bit of kit. Even more so than all the other bits and bobs that you still have to take. What I would say about the additional bits of mandatory kit, like your gloves and your hat, are yes, take them, and you have to take them. That will be checked at the bottom of the mountain, but that is a minimum that you have to take. If the weather is going to be really horrendous, don't take the thinnest pair of gloves you can find and the thinnest hat you can find. Take something that will actually be useful. If the weather's going to be rubbish, take a decent pair of gloves, or take a warmer hat if it's going to be super cold and you think you're going to get up the mountain. And that is really when you're going to want those bits of kit to be really useful. Okay. Whether you race the high route or the low route, you will need all this kit. When I raced 2 years ago, all the racers went round the low route because the weather was terrible, and the weather really was terrible. And most people were coming off the mountain with jackets. I say mountain, it's still very hilly, mountainous terrain out there. So make sure you have it, and make sure you know how to use it, and you're prepared to use it wherever you race. When you hit the bottom of the mountain, you think, I'm almost at the end. But you still got a 10k road run to do, and it's quite unpleasant most of the time. So now might be a really good opportunity to change back into a pair of road shoes if you want. A lot of people do. It might depend somewhat on your race situation, but with 10k to go, if your feet are a bit sore, it's a really good opportunity to put your road shoes back on, ditch your race kit, you don't need it at that point, and have a nice cruise along the road, or walk, or shuffle, and enjoy the last 10k of the race. The thing that I've forgotten about every year so far is that once you get back to the finish line, back to Tordon Hall, it's there's some nice soup and food put on by the locals in the hall, which is great, but you're freezing, and it's really good point to put some nice warm comfortable clothes in your bag, in your support car, so when you're finished you can put some nice non-salty, sweaty, horrible, crusty clothes on, and you can sit back and enjoy the food without that stench which we'll all have at the end of the race.